What if I told you that Trump's tariff policies have just triggered a perfect storm that's about to crash into your wallet harder than anything we've seen in decades? Welcome back to Tariff Watch, and today we're diving deep into breaking news that mainstream media is barely covering, but it's going to affect every single American. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this economic chaos is unfolding in real time, and you need to stay informed about what's coming next. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why some economists are calling this the most dangerous economic moment since 2008. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening right now. While most people are focused on political theater, a perfect storm of economic disasters is brewing that stems directly from Trump's trade war policies. And folks, this isn't just theory anymore. We're seeing real devastating impacts that are accelerating faster than anyone predicted. First, let's talk about the job market collapse that just hit us like a freight train. According to Japan Today, American employers unexpectedly cut 92,000 jobs last month. Let me repeat that. We lost 92,000 jobs when economists were predicting gains. The unemployment rate jumped to 4.4%, and here's the kicker. Fortune reports that revisions cut an additional 69,000 jobs from December and January payrolls. We're talking about 250,000 jobs disappearing in just 3 months. But here's what's really scary. This is just the beginning. The labor market expert quoted by Fortune said, "The job market is struggling in the face of so many headwinds, and those headwinds are directly connected to the trade war Trump started." Now, you might be thinking, okay, job losses are bad, but how does this connect to tariffs? Well, buckle up because this is where it gets really interesting. The tariff system has created such economic instability that we're seeing companies like Costco making unprecedented moves. According to CFO Dive, Costco's CEO Ron Vacris announced they're committed to flowing any tariff refunds, if and when received, back to customers through lower prices. Think about that for a second. Costco, one of America's most successful retailers, is so uncertain about tariff policies that they're having to make public promises about potential refunds they might never receive. This shows just how chaotic and unpredictable the tariff system has become for businesses trying to plan ahead. But the real bombshell comes when we look at what's happening globally. The economic instability from Trump's trade policies has created a domino effect that's now intersecting with international conflicts in ways that are absolutely devastating for American consumers. According to NBC News, the conflict with Iran is quickly becoming an economic problem for the United States and a policy dilemma for the Federal Reserve. Here's why this matters for your wallet. NBC reports that rising energy prices are complicating Federal Reserve rate cuts, which means the relief Americans desperately need from high interest rates is being delayed by geopolitical chaos that stems from economic nationalism. The Times of India reports that the US-Israel conflict with Iran is sending shockwaves through global business, with energy prices surging and supply chains for everything from food to car parts being disrupted. Channel News Asia confirms that businesses worldwide are being rattled, with critical shipping and air routes through the Middle East being disrupted. Now, here's where the tariff connection becomes crystal clear. When Trump launched his trade war, he weaponized economic policy in ways that destabilized international relationships. Foreign policy reports that Washington has abandoned any pretense of a just global order, and the New Republic notes that Donald Trump has lit a global match with his leverage-based foreign policy approach. This isn't just political commentary, this is economic reality hitting your daily life. When supply chains break down because of trade wars and international conflicts, prices go up. When energy costs surge because of geopolitical instability, everything gets more expensive. When job markets collapse because of economic uncertainty, families struggle to pay bills. Let me give you a specific example of how deep this crisis goes. Gizmodo reports on a bizarre international conflict inside Nexperia, a chip company where Chinese Dutch divisions hate each other so much that international diplomacy has failed to smooth things over. This isn't just corporate drama. This is about the semiconductors that power everything from your car to your smartphone. When international tensions destroy cooperation in critical industries, it drives up costs for everyone. The automotive industry is particularly vulnerable right now. The chip shortage we experienced during COVID was just a preview of what happens when international supply chains break down. Now we're seeing it happen again, but this time it's because of deliberate policy choices that prioritized economic nationalism over stability. CBC News reports that China is hedging its bets on helping Iran as Trump's policies create more international uncertainty. Think about what this means. Our biggest trading partner is making decisions based on the assumption that American economic policy is unreliable and aggressive. When other countries start planning around the expectation that America will be economically hostile, it creates a feedback loop that makes everything worse. The Irish Times reports that Irish banks are hoping their growth forecasts aren't already out of date as war rages in the Middle East. Even European financial institutions are having to constantly revise their economic predictions because the global situation is changing so rapidly. This kind of uncertainty kills investment, reduces hiring, and ultimately hurts working families. Here's what's really frustrating. This was all predictable. When you start trade wars, you create economic instability. When you weaponize economic relationships, other countries respond defensively. When you abandon multilateral cooperation, problems that could be managed collectively become crises that spiral out of control. The Federal Reserve is now caught between a rock and a hard place. They want to cut interest rates to help struggling American families, but rising energy costs from international conflicts make that risky because it could trigger inflation. NBC News reports that this is creating a policy dilemma that directly threatens Trump's affordability push. Let's talk about what this means for regular Americans. First, job security is becoming a major concern. We're seeing unexpected job losses across multiple sectors, and the trend is accelerating. Second, prices are going up faster than wages, which means your purchasing power is declining. Third, the uncertainty is making it harder for families to plan for the future. But here's what's really concerning. The people who warned about these consequences are being proven right, but the damage is already done. You can't unring a bell. Once you've destabilized international economic relationships, it takes years or even decades to rebuild trust and cooperation. The warehouse club model that Costco uses depends on predictable, stable supply chains to deliver low prices. When they're having to make public statements about tariff refunds, it shows just how much uncertainty has been injected into the system. These aren't normal business conditions. This is crisis management. What's happening in the semiconductor industry is particularly alarming. Gizmodo's report about the international conflict inside Nexperia shows how trade war mentalities are poisoning cooperation even within individual companies. When Chinese and Dutch divisions of the same company can't work together because of international tensions, it reveals how deep this crisis goes. The automotive industry depends on these chips, and Channel News Asia reports that supplies of critical raw materials are being squeezed by the international conflicts that have grown out of economic nationalism. This isn't just affecting luxury items. This is about the basic transportation that people need to get to work and take care of their families. Energy prices are surging because international cooperation has been replaced by confrontation. The Times of India reports that this is impacting everything from food to car parts, which means there's no part of your budget that's safe from these effects. Here's the really scary part. Foreign policy reports that citizens around the world are demanding a just global order as Washington abandons any pretense of providing one. This means we're not just facing economic headwinds, we're facing a fundamental breakdown in the international cooperation that made modern prosperity possible. The Irish banking sector's concerns about growth forecasts show how this crisis is spreading beyond America. When European financial institutions are worried about their predictions becoming obsolete because of Middle Eastern conflicts, it reveals the global scope of the instability that trade wars have created. The New Republic's analysis about Trump lighting a global match is particularly relevant here. When you use economic policy as a weapon, other countries treat you as a threat. When other countries treat you as a threat, they start making defensive moves that ultimately hurt everyone, including Americans. So, what can you do about this? First, understand that this isn't a temporary blip. These are structural changes to the global economy that will take years to resolve. Second, prepare for continued volatility in job markets, prices, and interest rates. Third, pay attention to companies like Costco that are trying to shield consumers from the worst effects, because their ability to do that has limits. Fortune's report about the job market struggling in the face of so many headwinds should be a wake-up call. These headwinds aren't natural disasters or unavoidable circumstances. They're the direct result of policy choices that prioritized short term political messaging over long term economic stability. The fact that we're seeing unexpected job losses while dealing with surging energy prices and supply chain disruptions creates a perfect storm that's going to be very difficult to navigate. NBC News reports that this is complicating Federal Reserve decisions, which means the tools that policymakers usually use to help during economic difficulties are less effective. Look, I know this is heavy stuff, but you need to understand what's happening because it's going to affect your life whether you pay attention or not. The tariff policies that were supposed to bring jobs back to America have instead created a cascade of international conflicts and economic instability that's now costing Americans jobs and driving up prices. The chip company conflict reported by Gizmodo is a perfect metaphor for what's happening globally. When international cooperation breaks down, everyone loses. When you can't even get Chinese and Dutch divisions of the same company to work together, how are you going to maintain the complex international relationships that modern supply chains require? Costco's statement about tariff refunds shows how businesses are trying to manage the chaos, but there are limits to what they can do. When even successful companies are making conditional promises about if and when they receive relief, it shows how uncertain the situation has become. The unemployment rate ticking up to 4.4% might not sound dramatic, but Japan Today's report about unexpected job losses shows the trend is moving in the wrong direction. Combined with the revisions that cut 69,000 jobs from previous months, we're looking at a pattern of deteriorating employment that's happening faster than most economists expected. Channel News, Asia's reporting on global business shockwaves reveals how interconnected our economy really is. When Middle Eastern shipping routes get disrupted because of conflicts that grew out of economic nationalism, it affects everything from the food you eat to the car you drive. The Irish Times report about banks hoping their forecasts aren't out of date shows how rapidly the situation is changing. When financial institutions can't make reliable predictions because international conflicts keep escalating, it creates uncertainty that kills investment and job creation. Here's the bottom line. Trump's trade war has created a perfect storm of economic instability that's now intersecting with international conflicts in ways that are devastating for American workers and consumers. The job losses, rising prices, and policy complications we're seeing are just the beginning. This is why Tariff Watch exists, to help you understand the real world consequences of trade policy decisions that often get discussed in abstract terms. The 92,000 jobs lost last month aren't abstract. They represent families that are struggling because of policies that were supposed to help them. So here's what I want you to do. First, hit that like button if this video helped you understand what's really happening in our economy. Second, subscribe and ring that notification bell because this story is evolving rapidly and you need to stay informed. Third, share this video with friends and family because most people have no idea how serious this situation is becoming. And finally, let me know in the comments what you're seeing in your own community. Are you noticing job losses, price increases, or business uncertainty? Your real world observations help all of us understand how these big economic trends are affecting regular people. The mainstream media is focused on political theater while the real economic crisis unfolds. But here at Tariff Watch, we're committed to giving you the straight truth about how trade policy affects your daily life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.